tipping can be a bit socially awkward, inconsistent and hard to agree on. In countries like America, though, it's common practice. So let's take a look at a clip from Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry David argues over tip etiquette.
We split a check, and he doesn't want to coordinate the tip.
Why should I? Why do I need to coordinate the tip?
You got with a friend. You tip in concert.
Why are we in concert? There's no concert.
No, two different people, two different tips. A tip is a solo, Larry.
No, it's
Thank
not.
you.
Tip in concert.
Thank you.
Come on.
Solo.
No.
Tip is a solo.
Tipping, what are the rules? How do they apply in Australia? How do you get an acceptable amount? For advice on tipping, financial advisor Analaura Luna. Good morning, Analaura.
Good morning.
Yeah, we've seen the American example. I mean, it is expected in America. There are differences. Perhaps explain those to us.
Yes, it's very different in the US, and that's because they actually, a lot of the hospitality staff don't get a base salary, so they actually live off their tips. So it's quite important. In Australia, it's a totally different scenario. We actually have a conservative approach towards tipping, where we would only tip if we have exceptional levels of service, and that's because we know that our hospitality staff do get a base salary, so the standard service is expected.
Yeah, it's for a lot of the times it shouldn't be the part-time job; it's an accepted profession. Okay, let's talk about, you know, we go out for a meal. What is the accepted tipping rate?
Well, in Australia, it's not expected to receive a tip. However, if we do, it's normally when we actually go to a high-end restaurant, or when we find ourselves achieving a high level of service. So in that case, we will be tipping about 10%. That tends to be the benchmark. It's important to note, though, that in most venues, they tend to have a tipping jar. So where all the waiters will pull their tips, and then they will distribute them evenly at the end of the night. So that way, you know, your tips not necessarily go to the person that they actually served you.
So it's an all-in. But this is mostly at high-end restaurants. What about, you know, brekkie lunch? Yes,
well, tipping for breakfast and tipping for lunch tends not to sit really well with most Aussies. So what happens is that we tend to just tip for dinner, and the 10% rule works.
Other areas, cabs?
Yes, well, with cabs, locals tend not to tip cabbies, but you'll find that, you know, they might round up the change to the closest dollar. Tourists, however, they're used to a different norm, so you'll find that with cabbies, they might receive a 10% tip on top of the fare. However, you have to be aware about, you know, broken meters, or if you find that the cab takes you the long way around to your destination, well, you know, in that case, just argue your fare and just don't tip.
Indeed. I did ask the question this morning. Chris from Geelong said, I'm happy to tip at a restaurant if the waiter's friendly and helpful, otherwise not. Vanessa from the Gold Coast says, I don't tip. I pay enough when I go out to dinner. Why should I pay on top of that? Do you find that sort of, you know, we've got some even Grace from Adelaide, I think we should tip. They don't earn that much, waiters and cabbies, so help them out. What do you think the average Australian attitude is?
Oh, I think it's, you know, when you do get the extra service, it's nice to give it a little extra, and, you know, at 10% or what you feel it might be adequate it's nice to keep it for the waiter or for the restaurant for the great service and meals. So yeah, I think people are quite generous, and they will leave something behind.
Well, thanks for the input, Analaura Luna. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay.